give it your best. You've got to reach your prime. That's when you need to put yourself to the test and show us the passage of time. We're gonna need a montage. Take some montage. Show life things happening at once. Remind everyone of what's going on. What's going on?
All right, let me put that back in. Welcome, everyone, to the Mile High League Champions. Damn it, I did it again. Hold on. I have the script here. 1 sec. Oh, my God, I just disabled my iPhone for 5 minutes. All right, I'm going to have to do this.
How'd you do that?
I'm going to do this from there. Well, Lincoln disabled it for 1 minute, and then I kept pushing the wrong passcode, frantically trying to figure out what my opening lines are. So, okay, take a pause here for a second and re-engage. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Mile High Champions League podcast. This is your host, the Commish, and with me, as always. Now, some say that he once punched Justin Bieber square in the nuts and that he knows 2 facts about ducks, and both of them are wrong. It's Big Nolsky. How you doing tonight, big guy?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm really good. I'm really good because this is the start of the podcast that you're going to hear. And prior to this, I'm going to keep the outtake that we just had because I don't know what the fuck was going on in my brain. But anyways, let's go right into the podcast. Noel, do you want to do any shithead this week? Or do you want to go right into the review?
I'm just going to, because I know Courtney will appreciate this. We're just going to continue with last week's and just give it again to Gronkowski because, Yep. I'm just going to leave it at that.
I just leave it at that. Yeah, you could definitely say yep to that. So, okay, very good. Let's go then to the review of the week. And we had 2 games, 2 winners. Let's start with Nick versus Josh. And you know what? Josh had a hell of a season. Even though he's not advancing to the Colorado Bowl, I don't think he can be disappointed with this season. It very much sucks that you had such a great regular season and now you're out of the playoffs. But nevertheless, he did have a phenomenal year. So congratulations, Josh. I'm sorry you lost this week. But let's talk about this game. Nick defeated Josh 150.6 to 145.2. 2 really big scores. So both of them had great weeks. Let's see how that happened. Let's start with the quarterback positions. Carson Wentz versus Jared Goff. Although Carson Wentz went out this week, he was able to put up 36.6 points, which is really good, even above his average for the week. So it sucks that he's out, but he did at least do one final hurrah for Nick. Jared Goff you could argue, cost Josh the playoffs here because he only got 18.2 points. It was one of his worst performances of the season. Kenyon Drake at the running back position versus Todd Gurley on Josh's team. Both these guys did phenomenally well. Kenyon Drake for Nick, 38 points. Todd Gurley, 2.0. Oh, no, Todd Gurley the second, excuse me. 37 points. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce apparently fell back to planet Earth from such a tremendous week last week. 12 points for Tyreek, 14 for Kelce. Not bad, but that certainly is nothing like the 44 for Tyreek last week, and the 25 for Kelce the week before. So these guys had a good week, but not great. Where it's actually funny here, we both had Kenyon Drake, Todd Gurley got 38 and 37 points respectively for Nick and Josh respectively. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce got 26 points. If you add up, Noel, AJ Green's points and Hunter Henry's, guess what it equals?
Yahtzee?
Yahtzee. Oh, no. No, it equals 26. No. Yahtzee's not a number anymore, at least. I've tried. I petitioned Congress, but they ignore me. AJ Green, 9 points. Not very good. That's obviously pretty low for him. His 3rd worst performance on the season, actually. So that's another, besides Goff, arguably the reason why Josh lost this week, and then Hunter Henry at 15. So funny that both of these positions, actually all 3 of the starting positions, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, you look at both these teams, there's only a single point difference for Nick there. So really, I would say then you fall back on the quarterbacks saying that he lost Josh this week. Des Bryant and Mark Ingram, again, very closely matched. Des Bryant 19, Mark Ingram 17. Samaji Sandwich versus Tariq Cohen. He did not have a good week. Samaje or Mr. Perrine at 13 points versus Tariq Cohen's 21. Tariq Cohen has had a nice last couple of weeks, so it's not bad for him. Cowboys D, good game, 18 points against a very shitty New York Giants offense, and then the Ravens did not have a great week against Pittsburgh, only putting up 8 points. And this is pretty remarkable, too. Both of their kickers scored 10 points. So this was about as evenly as of a match as you could possibly get. It may not be at the end result. Score is only determined by a tenth of a point, as we all know has happened in the past. But overall, this was an extremely even game. It just so happens to be that Nick was the better team this week. So anything you wanted to add to that, Noel?
No, it's about, I agree. This was one of those games where, it was a close game. Neither team disappointed. It was just, unfortunately for Josh, he just, as you said, had just guys that underproduced more. I guess apart from Carson Wentz being out now for the rest of the year, so it's sort of maybe, hopefully not a Pyrrhic victory, but part of the reason I think Hill and Travis Kelce both had lower outputs during this game was for most of that game against Oakland, the Chiefs were up. I think at one point it was 20, it might have been 26-0 at one point. So they really took their foot off the gas. So it could have been more. And at the same time too, Des Bryant, most of his points came off of a 50-something yard touchdown catch. So yeah, this was a tough one for Josh here, who had just a fantastic season, and it would have been nice to see him cap it off with a victory in the Colorado Bowl, but these things happen. This fantasy, so good season for both of you. Josh, in particular, just record breaking, and Nick, great first season and good. You've displayed good roster management too. Most of these players, not most, but Kenyon Drake, when you picked him up, it was very much a bold start. So he's your boldness has paid off. So good job, both you guys. Good season, Josh, and good win, Nick.
Outstanding. Now let's go on to the second game. Noel, if you don't mind taking the lead on this, explain why, and I think your shithead of the week kind of determines, or at least illuminates what happened here. But start us off with The Legend of Lincoln and American Doomgivers.
So, oh man, this looked like Courtney's game to lose going into Sunday night. It looked like Kenfield was pretty much just out of it. There was no kind of coming back for him. Because, Russell Wilson had a great week. Even with the 3 interceptions, he still put up 3 touchdowns and almost 40 points. Leonard Fournette, who's even banged up, and against that Seattle run defense, which even with the guys hurt in the back end, up front, they're good. 35 points. Stephon Diggs, Mike, as you predicted, down week. Cameron Brate, Mike, our O.J. Howard bullishness early in the season, or I guess before the season, we were just a little bit ahead of the curve there, because now O.J. Howard is really the tight end for Tampa Bay, and Cameron Brate just a sad 2 points, which would not have been the case for Courtney if Gronk hadn't been a dumbass meathead and tried to kill someone. And then from there, oh my gosh, this goes to Kenfield's team too. Christian McCaffrey was not the running back to start for Carolina this week, as Jonathan Stewart had 3 rushing touchdowns. And Jonathan Stewart is also was on Kenfield's bench this week. So Kenfield was kicking himself up until Sunday night. Marshawn Lynch, decent game, 19 points. Ryan Suckup, who, Mike, you're going to have to probably chime in here and to say what the ranking was before the week, but I'm pretty sure he was a top 3 fantasy kicker. 1 point last week. That's just not going to do it, even for a kicker. Vikings defense, unfortunately, did not live up to my expectations and give the Carolina Panthers fits. While they did slow down Cam Newton, they did not slow down Jonathan Stewart. And from there, I mean, Kenfield just really, it's all about Antonio Brown, Alex Collins, Josh Lambo, his kickers. That was a great start. And as Mike and I have always said, you play whoever plays against the Browns offense. So the Packers defense, as bad as they are, still got Kenfield 16.5 points. So even with Tom Brady having a shitty week, 14.8 points, Aaron Jones finishing with negative rushing yards, 4 attempts for negative 2 yards. And then single digits from both Jason Witten and Sterling Shepard, who did leave the game with a migraine issue. It was just too much for Courtney to overcome 75 points from just 2 players. It was crazy. So sorry, Courtney. I Gronk definitely would have tipped the scales in your favor here, but I know Kenfield is very much elated to be still in the. He's got 1 game left before he can finally get that trophy. I don't know if he's going to get it in Hawaii or not, but at least have his name engraved on it. So great win for Kenfield. Courtney, sorry you're such a promising season ended basically because of a meathead who's obsessed with 69, but it was still a good season. And keep your head held up high. I don't really know how to end that.
Yeah, that's about as the best as you could do, Noel. Thank you for that. It's not much you can say to somebody who's knocked out of the playoffs, especially when, I guess the consolation is that, because Noel and I are both silver lining type personalities, is that you played the best team that you could, that there's nothing more you could have done. Kenfield, had he lost, could have said, if I only would have put in Demaryius Thomas and or Jonathan Stewart, but Courtney's team did the best that it possibly could have. So you can at least be proud that you played the game as you should have, that there's no roster regrets there. So let's go into the preview, and this is a big one. We're going on to the Colorado Bowl. Before we tackle that, though, no pun intended or pun very intended, before we tackle that, let's talk about another important game. The 2 most important games happening this week are, number 1, the Colorado Bowl. Of course, the Colorado Bowl is important. Of course, it's happening. That's why we're all here. The second most important game, though, is not the battle for 3rd place. Oh, no, my friends. It is the battle for last place, which is going on right now between Vanessa and Ben. As we determined earlier this year, playfully, it's not going to be anything too punitive. Whomever the Mile High champion is, so Kenfield or Nick, and I think it'd be hilarious if it was Nick, gets to determine what the punishment is for getting last place. Now, we decided it's not going to cost you anything, that you don't have to, buy everyone a new Von Miller jersey. You don't have to buy shots or anything like that, unless you say, yes, I will do that. But Nick can choose, or Kenfield can choose, whatever Vanessa or Ben has to do at the Super Bowl party. Things such as, I don't know, wear the left shark costume that I wore to Halloween, or, wear a Patriots jersey to the Broncos Super Bowl party. It'll be interesting. You can, the world is your oyster. Don't be a dick, but the world is your oyster, so have some fun with it. So Ben and Vanessa, play your hearts out this week, because you don't want to get the Sacco Trophy. And for those who are not familiar with the Sacco, that's also from the league, which Noel and I have quoted many times on this podcast. The Sacco comes from a bull's actual testicle sack that they got and put on top of the last place trophy in the show, The League. Now, I'm not going to do that because that's disgusting. But in the spirit of the Sacco, I still wanted to have something fun done for the last place team. And as of right now, Ben is projected to beat Vanessa, so this will be very interesting to watch. Now, let's talk about what we're all here for, the Colorado Bowl. And looking at this from the start, I think it's going to be a pretty close game. We already have players starting. Kenfield has Demaryius Thomas in right now, who has a not very respectable 11 points, not too far off from what he normally gets. He's been averaging 12.5, so it's not exactly a big difference here. But I did notice he's got Jonathan Stewart in his lineup this week, which of course he would. Why wouldn't you after a week like last week? Let's look at what I would like to do, Noel, is go position by position. I will impart my opinions on the matter, and I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely.
So let's go start off with the quarterback position. We have Blake Bortles.
That's the thing. I was like, you're going to see this once we start recording.
That is an option you can choose, starting for Nick here.
One.
It's really
laughable,
not
but
bad.
it's not
Well,
bad.
Going against Houston's now without J.J. Watt. I mean, not now.
And Whitney Merciless.
A while back. And Whitney Merciless. They are without a good line and a good linebacking core, so they can exploit both of those. And I think Blake Bortles has the ability to do that. So they are actually the second worst defense against the quarterback. He's been averaging 22, projected 23. His last was 26. I think he'll absolutely nail that, but he's also going up against that position, Tom Brady, who is apparently pretty good at this whole football thing. Now, Tom did not have a great week last week. In fact, the last 2 weeks, he's struggled. He's only been in the teens, and that struggle might continue this week. He's projected 26.7 points, so he's projected over 3 points more than Blake Bortles going against a much tougher Pittsburgh defense at Pittsburgh, mind you. So they're at Heinz Field, and Tom Brady, while arguably the greatest of all time, is not necessarily the greatest on the road at all times. So we'll see how this one goes. If I were to actually pick between these two, I like Tom Brady a lot. I think he is still phenomenal. But I do think that Blake Bortles will edge him out this week, not by a lot, but I do think that his struggles continue, Tom's that is, and that Blake will be able to exploit weaknesses on the Houston defense. Bear in mind here, folks, that the Jacksonville Jaguars are very likely going to make the playoffs. They are first in the AFC South. I can't believe I'm saying that, but they are. Do you know what their record is, Noel?
Is it 9-5, 9-4, something like that?
9-4. Can you believe that I would be saying Jacksonville Jaguar and 9-4 without saying Jacksonville Jaguars do not have a 9-4 record? But yes, they do. 9-4. They have having a great season, and I expect that trend to continue. So I would put my check mark with Blake Bortles. What do you think, Noel?
I would, although something to watch out for here is, while I think the Tom Brady matchup against Pittsburgh, which should be tough, check out who Ken Field has in his bench right now. And because he's also got Antonio Brown, that could mean doubling up on his points, which I've been a proponent of in the past. So that's interesting to watch. But on this, at the same time, depending on if he's healthy enough to play, not that he's Antonio Brown or anything, but then Nick has a Pittsburgh receiver on his bench. So it's some interesting gamesmanship there possible. But yeah, I think Blake Bortles, even though it's Blake Bortles against Tom Brady, it's the matchups which we kind of have to go off of. So yeah, I give the edge to Blake Bortles over Tom Brady. I also think that Nick is smart for starting Blake Bortles over Jimmy Garoppolo, because while it is Blake Bortles, he also has actual better weapons to throw to, as where Jimmy Garoppolo has looked pretty good in San Francisco, but it's basically him and Carlos Hyde. That's been it. And they've been having a hard time actually finishing off drives with touchdowns. They've been winning they've been winning their 2 games, that is, with field goals. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Blake Bortles over Tom Brady on, probably pretty close, but I think you got to watch to see if Ken Field maybe decides to be bold and start Ben Roethlisberger over Tom Brady, which that is a tough decision. It's nothing. It's not something you would just do. Be like, oh, he's obviously better, but something to watch out for there for sure.
I think it might be fun to watch. You said it well, Noel, and this is what I try to do, is have a balanced week in, week out team so that I'm always hitting in the 120, 130 range. It doesn't always happen, obviously, but I like to do that because I like the consistency. And the Colorado Bowl, though, that goes out the window. You want high points, because if you have reached this far, there's a good chance that you've been scoring 130, 140 per week anyways. So you have to be crushing it. So you know what? If I were Kenfield, I would actually put in Ben Roethlisberger for the doubling effect, because Antonio Brown is probably going to do very well. He's been averaging 25 points. He is the #1 wide receiver, not to be unexpected. He can do the Charleston. You've seen the Pepsi commercial, which if you haven't, how have you not? And then I think that he'll just do – I think that'd be fun. The counter to that, obviously, is the Juju Smith-Schuster. If he plays, he's questionable right now with a hamstring, and he was limited in practice, so he might not. But that might be a fun little thing for Kenfield. If I were Kenfield, what do you got to lose? The worst you can do is get second place, which is still really remarkable. So why not? Go for it. Roll the dice. Let's talk about the running back position. We have Kenyon Drake versus Alex Collins. Both these guys, big weeks. Kenyon Drake had 38 points last week. Kenyon Drake, 40. So I think both these guys are going to do very well. Kenyon Drake seems to have really taken the role over in Miami from Jay Ajayi, and since then has only had one bad week. Bay. Other than that, he's had some pretty lights out weeks. He's going against the worst in the NFL, Buffalo run defense, number 32. Alex Collins is going against, again, a much stronger defense in Cleveland, believe it or not. Cleveland apparently does one thing fairly well, and that's a run defense. So I think that Alex Collins projected to get 22. That I think well within the realm of possibility. He's been having a pretty good the last 4 weeks, he's had 40, 31, 20, and 21 points. I think he'll do just fine. I think he's a fantastic running back. Man, but I actually think he'll hit the 21.9 projection. I don't think that's going to be that hard for him. Kenyon Drake, however, I think has my vote this week. Just because he is running against – well, no, let me take that back. I take that back. I'm actually going to put my vote for Alex Collins, and here's why. I don't know what's going on with the weather in Buffalo this week. And although Shady McCoy was able to perform well in a foot of snow, I don't think that that's necessarily something that Kenyon Drake can do, who's used to playing in sunny-ass Miami. So it may be challenging. Not to say Kenyon Drake won't put up points. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just think that it's more likely that Alex Collins will outperform Kenyon Drake, not by a wide margin, but by maybe a point or two this week, just because there's fewer obstacles for them to worry about except for the Cleveland defense. And especially since Cleveland sucks really hard, and we've talked about play the defense as playing Cleveland's offense. My comment here is, well, if their offense is bad, that means they can't put up points. I know Baltimore can. So if they're able to do that, they'll run the ball more and not pass as much, which gives Alex Collins that many more opportunities to touch the ball. In his last 4 weeks, he's attempted 18, 15, 16, and 20 rushing attempts, and he's done very well on each one of them and has scored a touchdown in each of the last 4 weeks. So his points are a little touchdown dependent. That's true. But if he has the opportunities, that obviously really helps you put up touchdowns. I don't like to rely on touchdown-dependent players, but it'll be interesting to see. So that's my vote. Good old Alex versus good old Kenyon. What do you think, Noel?
I agree. Not only just because the whole, as you said, weather thing, but also with Alex Collins, he's going to get the ball, like even if they're passing it, he's the check down guy. And he is much more of the kind of, forgive the kind of cliche here, but he's the bigger kind of goal line back that when they get near the end zone, he is going to get the ball. So yeah, he is touchdown dependent, but Kenyon Drake is, not saying this is a bad thing, but Kenyon Drake is more big play dependent. He's not as big of a back as Alex Collins. He's faster, so he can get those explosive runs. But if he doesn't get those, and if it's, say, another snowy Buffalo week in Buffalo, that might be tough. So, yeah, I agree. I like Alex Collins over Kenyon Drake, but I think, as you said, Mike, it's a good matchup both ways.
All right, let's talk about the wide receiver position, Tyreek Hill and Antonio Brown. I do like Tyreek Hill a lot. He is going to give Antonio Brown a run for his money, but this is Antonio Brown we're talking about. And if you look at – here's the funny thing about how good Antonio Brown is. Tyreek Hill is the third best wide receiver in the Mile High Champions League. He's been averaging 18.5 points. the spread between him and the number one wide receiver, Antonio Brown, is pretty remarkable. So Antonio Brown has been putting up 25 points per week. Tyreek has been putting up 18.5. So there's a 6.5 point spread per week for Antonio Brown. And I think that since he's going against New England's third worst defense against the wide receiver, that Antonio Brown is clearly my choice for wide receiver in this position. I think Tyreek Hill will do just fine. He's projected to get 14 points, 13.8. I think he'll get that. But I don't think he'll do phenomenally well, particularly because the Los Angeles Chargers tend to have a pretty good secondary, and they're ninth best against the wide receiver position. So my vote, Antonio Brown this week. Who's your vote, Noel?
I'm going to vote Antonio Brown, but with a bit of a caveat, because while New England is not good, well, has been bad against opposing wide receivers, they tend to do a good job of bracketing whoever the best receiver is, which in this case is obviously Antonio Brown. So he will be like when the Patriots have played the Falcons, Julio Jones is largely absent because they follow him around with usually two defenders, which opens up everything else for everybody else. But even with that being said, Antonio Brown's one of these guys that almost all teams try and do this, but as the game goes along, even when you're like, all right, they should do something else, they keep going back to him, and he just wears defenses down. So that's kind of I'm pro Antonio Brown, but kind of keep that in mind that New England will follow him around with two defenders. And a Tyreek Hill, as we said before, he's, as I said in the last comment I made, he is also big play dependent. And while it's so hard to say, LA Chargers have had a generally good pass defense this year, they're pretty banged up in the secondary. So Tyreek Hill could bust a big play, but it would go against kind of what they've been doing so far this year. But I think I don't think Antonio Brown will have as big of a game as he's had in recent weeks, but I do think he should still get the edge over Tyreek Hill.
Agreed. All right, let's talk about tight ends. Travis Kelce versus Jason Witten. As much as I love Jason Witten, I have to go with not the same person. Travis Kelce, because he's the number one tight end, and I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, I thought he would end up the number one tight end throughout the season, and that seems to be the case, particularly because Gronk earning shit out of the week got a big fat 0 last week, so that's certainly not going to help his stats. Jason Witten is good. He is in the top 10 tight ends, but he is not as good as Travis Kelce this year. He's been averaging 9.2 points to Travis Kelce's 16.2. That's a pretty big spread. Let's talk about projections. Travis Kelce is projected to get 15.7 against the 6th best Los Angeles Chargers defense. Jason Witten projected to get 8.6 against the 26th best Oakland defense against the tight end. Although Jason Witten is going against a easier defense, I still got to give it to Travis Kelce. Watching him play, there's something special about him. So I do think that Travis Kelce will take the cake on this one. What do you think?
Totally agree. I don't have anything else to add. It's Travis Kelce by far, and Jason Witten. Yes, Oakland's defense isn't very good, but it's Travis Kelce versus Jason Witten. It kind of goes without saying.
It just kind of goes without saying. Flex 1, we have two wide receivers, Demaryius Thomas versus Desmond Bryant. Is Des his full name? Desmond?
I have no
Desington?
idea.
Desbert. I think it's actually Desbert. So Desbert Bryant and
Demaryius
Thomas. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. My mistake. It's Desmondington Bryant the 32nd out of West Hampshire Tires. Sure. The third. So Des Bryant, Demaryius Thomas. I think both these guys are pretty good. Demaryius Thomas is playing right now and is got 11 points. That's not too bad. He's got 5 receptions on 69 yards. Certainly not bad. That's about in line with his average of 12.5. So I guess that's what you can expect out of Demaryius Thomas. Certainly not as good as last week, which is why I'm guessing Kenfield put him in at 23 points. But that was also tied for his best performance of the season when he got 23 points against the Giants week 6. So I guess that's all you can expect in Demaryius Thomas is kind of mid-range tight end numbers. So he's got 11. Des Bryant's got 0 because he's not playing right now. He is playing the night game on Sunday. He's projected 13.1 points against a pretty good Oakland defense. I think that I would go with Des Bryant here. And it's just because Demaryius Thomas, unless he does something, we're recording this Thursday night, unless he does something in the next 3 minutes and 50 seconds, which is left in the game, I think Des Bryant could surpass 11 points. That's not too hard for him to do. He's done it most weeks of the seasons except for weeks 1, 3, 8, 10, and 12. So most other weeks he's surpassed that number. And he also didn't score any points on his bye week. Thanks, Desmond Monington.
What a douchebag.
Sure. No, I know. Why wasn't he douche? So I think Des Bryant for me this week. What do you think, Noel?
I think this one's a total wash because, first of all, I think Thomas probably isn't going to get any more points. Sorry, Kenfield, because the Broncos are currently up 25-13 with, as you said, 3 minutes and 50 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And mind you, the Broncos scored, I think, a touchdown in the first half. And the Colts scored 10 of their 13 points in the first half. So it's been a very lopsided second half. I'm guessing they're just going to run the ball, and Demaryius Thomas might get one catch or something if they want a first down. That's probably it. But for Des Bryant, the problem for him is here, he was never really the kind of explosive receiver that I think some of us thought he was. He runs great routes. His ability to attack the ball in the air is not quite the same level as, say, Larry Fitzgerald, but that really is what his forte comes down to. So he just, since being injured a couple of years ago, he just hasn't been the same. And Mike, as you pointed out, Dak Prescott doesn't quite know how to utilize him the same way that Tony Romo does. And Oakland's defense, while they're not very good against the pass, their problem is that their corners are slower than most. So when they're going up against a slower Des Bryant, and Des Bryant also can usually use his muscles to push defenders out of the way, that's not really the case with Oakland's corners. So even with this, if he finished with 11 points, I think this is a total wash. I think this is the toss-up because I don't like Des Bryant this week at all. And I liked Kenfield starting Demaryius Thomas, but with Brock Osweiler going to the game because Simeon got hurt again, it kind of makes sense that the backup players are getting some more love during this game. So, yeah, a very unexciting analysis for me there. I think both these players aren't going to do very well this week.
Both of them wear jerseys. Okay, yay! Let's go on to this flex 2 position. Latavius Murray versus Jonathan Latavius Murray. Jonathan Stewart Murray. So we talked about Jonathan Stewart's big week last week, 48 points. Every other week this week, except for weeks 10 where he got 26 points and week 1 where he got 22, have been rather shitty. So I don't expect Jonathan Stewart to have a good week versus Latavius Murray now that Adrian Peterson and that other guy are gone. He's been having not too bad. He didn't have a good week last week. He only got 4 points. But prior to that, from week 7 to 13, he's been getting double-digit points except for week 8 where he got only 8. Otherwise, it was 32, 19, 32, 22, and 20. That's pretty good. So I think Nick can rely on Latavius Murray running against Cincinnati's 28th defense against the run. That's pretty bad to be able to put him up some decent points. He's been averaging 12. He's projected 20.6, and I think he'll absolutely nail that. So I think that I would put my money on Latavius Murray simply because I think Jonathan Stewart's last week was a fluke. I don't think he's going to do it again, particularly because now that the Green Bay defense has been watching film, they're going to say, here's how Jonathan Stewart beat the Vikings D, which is pretty good. Vikings D is not bad. They're not great, but they're not bad. So if we can key in on that, then he should be able to do just fine. So I'd actually expect Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey to have good weeks, but not Jonathan Stewart. So I would put my check mark in Latavius Murray's court, let's say. Let's do that.
Uh-oh. You still there?
I am still here.
Okay, sorry. Kind of cut out for a second. Shit. Do you want me to weigh in here? Or?
Please. Who do you think is going to be better?
Sorry. No, I agree. I think Latavius Murray, although something to watch out for is it's been Latavius Murray as of late as far as who gets the most carries in the Minnesota backfield after my guy went down early in the year. Dalvin Cook, what a douchebag. And I agree that Jonathan Stewart, I think last week, had just a monster game, which he probably won't replicate. But say Murray isn't getting it done and Jerick McKinnon is, he might take some carries away from Murray there. And Green Bay's defense is not good against the run, but I'm with you, Mike. I think Stewart's not the guy to do it. But I do think it's interesting to watch. Again, look at Nick's bench. He's got Samaje Perine, who is playing against a sort of tough Cardinals defense, but he's put up some good weeks. Jamal Williams, who after Aaron Jones, who I used to have, also went down, has had good weeks as well. So he might decide to tinker things there as well. But I think, I believe Murray should get the nod here. And since he's defense I think Marvin Lewis might be out of a job after this season because just the whole team doesn't seem to be consistent at all.
Okay. Well, let's look at the last two positions here. I think we could skip the kickers because who really cares? I keep saying that. They do add value to the game. I really don't. I dislike kickers here, but how are you going to analyze a kicker? Because it's really dependent upon more the distance from the actual goalpost than it is, they've got a really great kick blocker who can block anything within 30 yards. So yeah. I think we just kind of skip it's fun when you've got kickers that score. It's like a Will Lutz scoring a lot of points for you. But it's just, otherwise it's hard to analyze. So I think both these guys will do just fine.
I think it's one of those things where, like, the best analogy as far as sports I can think of is like a closer in baseball. They're so dependent on the situation that they go into that it's really hard to analyze anything past like whether or not they are generally accurate or have like a good range. That's about all you can go off of.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, and those are so hard to predict anyways. So let's just look at the defenses. So Nick is playing the Ravens, who's playing the Cleveland offense. So the Ravens are the second best defense this year going against the second worst offense. I think that is a recipe for success. They've been averaging 21.7. They're projected 15.6. I think those projections are low. I think they'll hit somewhere in the high teens, maybe to 20s. Just because Cleveland is so prone to making stupid errors, which leads to interceptions and potentially touchdowns. And the Ravens so far this year have already scored 6 touchdowns. So they're not. It's not unlikely that it's not likely that they'll score a touchdown, I should say, but it's not unlikely either. So I think the Ravens will do just fine versus the Dolphins going against Buffalo's offense. Buffalo's not bad, like really bad, like Cleveland is. They're not great, though. They're 21st best, so he's going to have the opportunity to have the Dolphins put up some points here. I still think that the Ravens, though, have the leg up this week. So what do you think, Noel?
I agree with you, mainly because the Ravens have been really good against bad offenses this year. They've had some bad games against good offenses. So going against Cleveland, yeah. And also the whole thing that as where Buffalo tends to be very, very conservative, almost conservative to a fault on offense. They just don't want to turn the ball over. It's not that Cleveland is not conservative. They just turn the ball over because they're really bad. So because how fantasy defenses work, where turnovers are awesome, I think Cleveland's going to turn the ball over more than Buffalo. And it should be noted that after winning a game last week with not only their third string quarterback, he was technically a wide receiver / special teams player after their backup, Nathan Peterman, went out with the concussion last week. Tyrod Taylor is back this week after sitting out last week with a knee issue. So he's not going to burn the Dolphins' offense or defense at all, but it is a better matchup than, say, playing Joe Webb. I think this one's a pretty easy check mark for the Ravens and for Nick over Ken Field's Dolphins defense here.
All right, so then let's talk about who the actual winner is going to be. I think looking at everything we just talked about here, everything that we just analyzed and everything that has happened so far this year, I think Nick is going to be the next Mile High champion. I think that he's got a lot on his team to like. I think I like more of his players. I think that Kenfield will do just fine this week. I don't think it's going to be like a complete blowout. But if you look at Nick the last several weeks, he has had a good last couple weeks showing, in addition to what he's been able to do this entire season. So in round 1, he defeated me by putting up 186.8 points. In round 2, he defeated Josh by putting up 150.6 points. So his players are on fire right when he needs them to be. So my vote for next Mile High champion is Nick. What's yours, Noel?
While I, of course, want to root for my good friend Matt Kenfield here, I'm with you. I think this is Nick's to lose because, unfortunately for Kenfield, I just see too many games where they're letdowns. I think Alex Collins is prone for letdown this week. I mean, even if he starts Ben Roethlisberger, like it's one of these things where it's Pittsburgh, New England. They're going to play each other tough. So even either one of those could be let down. Antonio Brown, I think, will not hit projection. And I don't think Jonathan Stewart's going to do anything like he did last week. And there's just so, like, almost every week, there's so much upside to Nick's team between Kenyon Drake, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. Those guys can just break big plays open at will, when it's there. So it pains me to say it just because, Kenfield's been a good friend of mine for so long. But yeah, I think this is Nick's to lose. And as always, great seasons for both. And I hope this is a great game. And I hope you guys have enjoyed your run so far. And we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm with you. I think this has got to be the check mark for Nick going into the game.
Which would be impressive because this is technically his first season with his own team. So that would be, I think, a first, except for Noel, who in the very first season.
When we all had the first season.
When we all were the first season. So may not be the last time, but it is impressive to me nonetheless. So congratulations to whomever wins. We're both cheering for a good game. For all the shit we talk, for all the expletives, for everything that goes on in the Mile High Champions League, we are all still friends and family. So I cheer for good sportsmanship. And I cheer for everyone in the league. I love you all. So is there anything else, Noel, you wanted to add to this week's podcast?
Well, because it makes no sense to say go Broncos because they goddamn won.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, I want them to lose. I want a better draft pick. I'm torn.
But from what I've been, my TV's on the background here, so I've been looking over my shoulder throughout the podcast. The offense looks more coherent, I guess is the word to use. Even with Osweiler back there, he kind of looks like he sort of knows what he's doing. So maybe that's some stuff to look forward to. Other than that, just, yeah, good luck to both the guys going in the Colorado Bowl this week. And, yeah, and we'll, other than that, we'll get to it next week, right?
Yeah, last podcast of this season. We'll be able to wrap it up. We'll have a Mile High champion. We'll have everyone else in the position. We'll have the Sacco. And the Sacco. So we will have everything ready for you for the final podcast of the season. I've had a lot of fun so far. So this is our penultimate podcast, which is a word I think is not used often enough. I had no idea what it meant until a couple of years ago.
It's a good word.
I was just like, it sounds like even better than ultimate. It's like, oh, it's penultimate. Sweet. And you're like, no, that's not at all what it means. But we're I don't know. I love doing this, so I'm excited to see who ends up ultimately winning this one. I am going to leave the Twisted Sister podcast or the Twisted Sister song up there because we're not going to take it. And oh, come all you faithful
anymore. Wait,
anymore. Yeah, that song's amazing. I was singing it so much last week that Courtney's like, stop singing that. Oh, come all ye faithful. Okay. Well, with that beautiful interlude, let's wrap it up. So thank you so much for listening to our podcast this week. And then Noel, since the Broncos have already won, send us out a different way.
Go Colorado Bowl!
Yeah, go Colorado Bowl. Bye, everyone.